Hello everyone and welcome to today's Learning from the Legends session. I am Brady McGrath-Kong, Membership Manager with the National Auctioneers Association. Thank you for joining us. Learning from the Legends is a free educational series produced by the NAA to share the professional experience and knowledge of some of the association's foremost experts and industry veterans. We're excited today to be joined by Terry Dunning. Terry has been actively involved in auctions, appraisals, and real estate since 1957. President of Dunnings, Inc., he is a life member of both the National Auctioneers Association and the Illinois State Auctioneers Association and holds the CAI and MPPA designations. Terry Dunning was president of both the National Auctioneers Association and the ISAA. He previously served as an instructor for the NAA and the Illinois Education Institute, as well as chairman of the Illinois Auction Advisory Board. Terry is a past National Auctioneers Foundation chairman, a former member of the CAI Board of Governors, and a past AMI treasurer. He is very active in his local community where he was chair of the hospital board for 12 years and has been instrumental in several other nonprofit boards. Terry was inducted into the NAA Hall of Fame in 1981. Thank you for joining us today, Terry.
Always good to talk to the NAA.
Terry, as the saying goes, every story has a beginning. So how did you get involved in the auction industry?
Well, I began in the auction industry when I was probably 10 years old. Mostly my father was in the auction business, and I ended up being a gopher most of the time, running sheets when we had auctions. Sometimes I would go to the auction, sometimes I wouldn't, but when I was there, I usually had gopher things to do, I guess, up until the time I was probably old enough to carry furniture. And then I went to that end of the business, and finally, and I think it was 19, my father kept saying to me, you know, it's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn to sell. And not me. I have no interest in doing anything like that. Finally, one day I said, okay. And I got up and started selling, and that didn't go too bad, and then never looked back.
Now, it sounds like your father was important to the beginning of your career, but as you think back in those first few years when you kind of struck out on your own, was there anyone else who served as a mentor to you, and how did you build those relationships?
Well, you know, basically, I guess in those days, I wasn't involved in the national, I was involved in our state association, and there was another auctioneer that actually my dad got started in business also. And he was someone that beside my dad that I would look to. And then there was another man who's actually way back in 1919, my father went to his auction school, Kerry Jones Auction, and he lived in Oak Park. And I did not really like him necessarily, but he taught me more than anybody did about certain things in furniture and how to put an auction together. But I think those people were probably the people that I would look to in my first few years in the auction business.
We learn a lot in life from the mistakes we make. Can you share a time when you faced a challenge and what you did to overcome it with your business?
Well, had been in business for a while, but had never really gone forward. We had a lot of screw-ups in auctions over the years, too many to even remember. And I guess I always looked at those things that they were learning experiences, and went on from there and didn't look back. But I think one of the things that was really kind of a change in my life was a major failure. Was in we started selling antiques from Europe, and I used to go back and forth to England and buy antiques with a friend of mine over there, with an acquaintance of mine that I met from England. And we bring them back and sell them. And we finally decided I'm going to move to Chicago. And so in 1971, I opened an auction gallery on Michigan Avenue in Chicago with the idea I was going to make $10 million or whatever, be a very big success. Well, it lasted about a year and a half, and it was an absolute failure. The customers, the good customers that I had didn't come to the downtown location. It just kind of spiraled downward from the very beginning. But the thing that happened from that particular failure, which I kind of put my tail between my legs and came back to Elgin and figured I would keep on going. But the thing that was the biggest success from that was during my year and a half in Chicago and in the auction gallery, is what I was doing, and when I wasn't getting ready for auctions, was out talking to bankers. And I worked. I'd keep calling on bankers and calling them bankers, and try to get their business. It was almost strange that it was about the same time that we were closing the doors in Chicago. We're having our last auction when Northern Trust called me and said, you know, you've been coming in here all along and wanting to do something for his auctions, and we've got an auction that I think it started out as an appraisal that we'd like to have you take a look at. And it was one of those things that it was a fantastic auction. Everything we did was absolutely right. They were so happy, they were just delighted. And that basically began my career with working with the banks in Chicago. And probably about 3 years later, I was handling the biggest share of the auctions for all the major banks in Chicago and some of the attorneys. And so even though that my little escapade in Chicago was a failure, it was a big success.
That's a cool story. Now with 60 years in the business behind you, what are some things new auctioneers should do to ensure success, whether it's at the beginning of their career or maybe for longevity?
Well, you know, I think social media is great, but you know, you need to. I think my biggest thing has always been to anybody in any kind of a business that you're dealing with people is develop relationships. Whether you're working in the personal property or real estate field, whether you're working in a commercial industry or whatever, you need to work with people who are going to develop relationships with people who are going to give you long-term auctions, whether if you're successful with them, working with the banks, working with the attorneys, working with anybody in an industry in which the type of goods that you sell are important. And because those are the people who give you not the first sale, but if it's successful, will give you the second one and the third one and the fourth one. But I think developing relationships and keeping those relationships are, you know, extremely important. And of course, product knowledge is a number one. Is you're never too old to learn, and you can keep on learning whatever you're selling. You need to keep on learning about the new things and knowing how to sell those.
What is one of the biggest changes that you've seen happen in the auction industry in the past 10 years?
Well, I think the internet auctions now are. I mean, it's in the last 10 years, this internet auction business is just grown exponentially. It's I mean, it's how many people that are selling pretty much most of their auctions, maybe all of their auctions, strictly online rather than live auctions. You know, it's opened up the market basically to the world. You can get people. You know, we sell things to, you know, people buy in China and Europe, and we used to have phone bidders in some of those countries, but it was always a little difficult keeping people on the phone. But I think the internet auction has become in the last 10 years, it's taken a lot of the fun out of it, as far as I'm concerned. But it certainly has improved business, a lot more opportunity to sell personal property, real estate, whatever their field is.
What is your favorite thing about being an auctioneer?
Well, I think my favorite thing about being an auctioneer over the years has been dealing with people, and I've always been a people person, I guess. And I always enjoyed the relationships that I had made with both buyers and sellers over the years. You know, I don't have the business anymore that I had for years, but I still go to some of the auctions that are around, and I see people who are customers of mine, and it's always nice to talk to them. You know, it's kind of funny because my dad used to do the same thing, and I thought, boy, that, you know, I can't find something else to do. I would seem to want something more interesting to do than come to the auctions. Well, you know, I guess I'm doing the same thing today. You know, I look at those things that, and I enjoy talking to those people. I certainly don't miss all of the aggravations that went on and behind the scenes. But that would be the thing I think I enjoyed mostly about being able to help people that were, you know, that either needed to sell things, that wanted to sell things, and being able to achieve a good price for them and that they were pleased with. So I think those are the things I look back on and what I like the most about the auction business.
And finally, as a professional auctioneer, how has your membership in both the NAA or the IFA helped you out?
Well, you know, I guess that I don't guess. I know that the education aspect of the business has probably been number one. You know, building relationships with other auctioneers has been great also. But you know, learning things from other auctioneers. When I started coming to the conventions many years ago, we didn't have education seminars at that time, but it's just coming to there and talking to some of the other auctioneers that were there. I started learning things. I started learning how to do things. Another thing that I can always remember, we were we weren't the one. We were the first auction company here in the Midwest that used computers, and that basically came from attending some of the auction conventions. I can't remember the exact year, but I think it was about 1978 or so, in the late 70s. We didn't have data at that time, but the amount, not like we do today. I think the trade shows are wonderful today for auctioneers, but at that time we didn't have those things, and I can always remember talking to a couple of people out east that were starting to use the computers to do their auctions, and my wife and I came back from that convention. It was out in Boston, and said, we're going to try this. We're going to figure out. Well, we started using the computers, and boy, I tell you, I was one scared puppy that these things weren't going to work. But they did, and it was a revelation. And then we started using the buyer's premium, which was the first time that ever had the buyer's premium any place in the Midwest, and that was probably in the early '80s someplace. And everybody thought that was not going to be a success. Well, I don't think many auction companies that, at least in major urban areas, that don't use the buyer's premium anymore.
Finally, Terry, do you have any other words you'd like to share with members?
Well, you know, I think the big thing is and not only just new auctioneers, but the old auctioneers that have been around for a while. You know, I've always found business runs in cycles sometimes. Sometimes you think that is my phone ever going to ring? You know, nothing seems to be happening. You just need to be persistent. And when things slow down, you need to start getting back in the telephone and calling your contacts and continue to work the business. You can't say just because you're not getting sales, you can't sit behind the desk and hope the phone's going to ring. You have to be out getting auctions again and making contacts to try to get auctions. So I think that's the biggest thing I would tell any of the auctioneers that are in business. And I'm sure all of the people who've been around for as long as I have been around, or even for quite a while, you know, have seen those ups and their downs in their business, and they knew that they just had to get out and keep plugging.
Thank you, Terry. Before we end today's session, a couple of closing notes. We'll be back next month with a new installment in the Learning from the Legends series. You can access past sessions at auctioneers.org/legends. Thanks again for taking part in Learning from the Legends. We'll see you next month.